1847.
This is CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg.
Hi, I'm Saroja Coelho, host of the Saturday afternoon call-in show, Just Asking.
And I'm Ian Hannamansing, host of the Sunday afternoon call-in show, Cross Country Checkup.
Whether it's world events
or what's happening in your backyard,
every weekend we connect Canada live.
That's Just Asking with Saroja Coelho, Saturday afternoons at 4 Eastern.
And Cross Country Checkup with Ian Hannamansing, Sunday afternoons at 4 Eastern on CBC Radio 1.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere.
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at 14 degrees with cloudy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. Manitoba's Children's Advocate says more needs to be done to help families prevent sleep-related infant deaths. A new report found between 2019 and 2021, there were 48 sleep-related infant deaths in our province. 81% of those were Indigenous. 64% were in overcrowded homes, and 85% happened in homes without access to safe sleep surfaces. Advocate Sherry Gott says there was another alarming statistic.
These deaths were overwhelmingly located in pockets of the city where the average household income is lowest. This is no coincidence. Indeed, this finding demonstrates the stark reality that low socioeconomic status is associated with sleep-related infant deaths, and this is wholly unacceptable.
Gott is calling on the province to take targeted steps toward improving the social determinants of health for all Manitobans, as well as ensuring families have access to information around safe sleeping. The province is once again lowering the eligibility age for women to get screened for breast cancer. Health Minister Uzoma Asaguera says the government will lower the age for self-referral screenings from 50 to 40 by the end of 2026.
We've previously already committed to lowering the age to 45 by the end of next year. And this is a really aggressive timeline to get to 40, but we know that this is an important timeline for women across this province.
Asaguera says the province is working with Cancer Care Manitoba to build up capacity for an expected influx of screenings. That includes hiring more mammographers and technologists and adding more appointments. Asaguera says today's announcement is in response to calls from breast cancer patients and survivors to lower the eligibility age to 40. Florida's governor says the worst case west coast overnight, but the storm did bring ferocious winds, torrential rains, and spawned dozens of tornadoes. So far, 5 deaths have been confirmed. As search efforts continue, officials warn that number could climb. Ethel Musa has more.
In Florida, Hurricane Milton has come and gone, but in its wake, a trail of...
I've lived here all my life. I've never seen anything like this.
Palm Beach County Sheriff Rick Bradshaw.
This is severe damage that could have been a heck of a lot worse than it was as far as loss of life, but it's still something that I've never seen.
The storm also spawned deadly tornadoes across the state. The west coast of Florida was hardest hit by the hurricane, but Amanda Garcia on the Atlantic coast says,
every other street, if it's not power lines and trees, it's literally floods.
Now crews in Florida are focusing on rescuing residents stranded by the storm and still recovering from the last just a few weeks ago. Ethel Musa, CBC News, Washington.
Turning to West Asia, Palestinian medical officials say an Israeli strike on a school sheltering displaced people in Gaza has killed at least 28. It's the sound of the Al-Aqsa Hospital being overwhelmed with wounded people, some of whom lie in hospital's hallways of the hospital. The Israeli military says it made a precise strike on Hamas fighters operating inside the school, but Gaza's health ministry calls the strike a massacre. Many schools in the territory have been turned into shelters for Palestinians who have been forced to flee their homes. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is calling on the federal government to designate the Houthi rebels as a terrorist group. Poilievre says Canada must do more to protect Jewish people at home and abroad. Here's Kate McKenna.
Common sense conservatives are calling on the NDP Liberal government to list the Houthis as a terror group.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre pushing the government to move on something it said it was considering at the beginning of this year.
That will allow our law enforcement the power to seize their bank accounts, shut down their operations, criminalize recruitment, logistics, and planning on Canadian soil.
The Houthis were designated a terrorist organization by the Americans in January. The group originates in Yemen and is aligned with Iran. It has been targeting merchant ships in the Red Sea, and earlier this week the group said it fired 2 missiles at central Israel. Poilievre is also calling for a second group, Samidoun, to be designated as a terrorist organization, alleging it's tied to the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which Canada already lists as a terrorist group. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
Air Canada pilots have voted to ratify a new labor deal after 15 months of negotiations. The company narrowly averted a strike in September by reaching a tentative deal with the union, but the agreement was criticized by pilots. In the end, 2/3 of union members voted in favor. Under the agreement, pilots will see a 43% pay increase over 4 years, as well as improved working conditions. And finally, Ethel Kennedy has died. She was the wife of Senator Robert Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, and was at his side when he was assassinated in Los Angeles in 1968. Her brother-in-law, President John Kennedy, JFK, had been assassinated in Dallas less than 5 years earlier. Ethel Kennedy had been admitted to hospital this week after suffering a stroke and died today at the age of 96. Mainly cloudy today in Winnipeg, a high of 25 degrees. Brandon, a high of 21 and mainly cloudy. Dauphin, mainly cloudy, a high of 18 degrees. Flin Flon, a high of 14 with a chance of showers. Thompson, showers, a high of 11 degrees. And in Churchill, you're seeing mainly cloudy conditions with a high of +9.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Radio Noon. I'm your host today, Brittany Greenslade, and we have a full show. Coming up at 12:35, we're going to be talking about alcohol sales. They are on the decline in Manitoba. I want to hear from you. Have you cut back on your drinking? Maybe given it up altogether? Was it the cost, the health, the lifestyle? We're going to be opening up our phone lines, but you can text us right away, 204-588-7355. Also, we're celebrating women writers over 50 in Canada. We'll meet an author from Lac du Bonny featured in a special upcoming edition of Prairie Fire, who takes inspiration from small town life. But first, why it's taken nearly 2 decades to build a personal care home. We'll speak with a man who's been working tirelessly to get it built. It is 12:07 here on Not Up to Speed, Radio Noon today. My apologies. Well, just off Highway 11 sits a sign that says future home of the Lac du Bonny Care Home. The catch? It's been there for nearly 2 decades. It's on the edge of a 10-acre patch of land that was set aside by the town, thinking the province would build a 95-bed personal care home. But it hasn't. Yet. This spring, the provincial government promised shovels would be in the ground by the end of the year, and with under 3 months left, Gordon Peters plans to hold them to it. He's president and interim CEO of the Lac du Bonny Heritage Corp. He's also the town's former mayor. He's been working to get the PCH built for 16 years. We met him at the edge of a vacant field yesterday.
Okay, we're on Leslie Avenue, south side of town. Personal care home.
And it's been sitting like this for 20 years.
Yes, sir. It has. And people drive by, and I know that that personal care home sign out on the highway, there was efforts by the province to take that sign down. I said no. I was mayor here for 8 years, and it was during that time, and I said no, we'll take over the responsibility of that sign. It's staying.
Now, this care home is now finally, the government just announced not long ago that it is going to be built. What was that feeling like when you actually learned it's going to happen?
Well, it was great news. The project has been, in the history of those that have been around here longer than I have, is about 30 years. And so we've had back in 2012 in that area, there was development by the NDP government, and they spent several $1 million getting ready, and then there was the cancellation of that after the election and money savings going on, and then we Also 17, and there was no official government response from that. But now we've been invited by the previous conservative government to develop a plan, and that's been done, and we followed through, and we're ready to build. Now the announcement is going ahead after the pause is exciting, and we're delighted to be able to lead this when the final steps are made to get it going.
So 20 years, like of hoping to get this up and running. I imagine when it first started, there was a lot of optimism that it would be happening, in short order. Yeah. What was the delay? Was it mostly politics? That's what it kind of sounds like to me.
I would say yes, and provincial budgeting and so on. The money needs to be there to be able to do projects like this, and it didn't seem to be on the previous occasions. So that's what we're believing is now readily available, and so we're ready to go.
So NDP government says shovels in the ground by the end of the year this year. I know it's been 20 years coming. Are you hopeful that actually that's going to happen?
We believe it'll happen. Yeah. The commitment's been made, and then there was delays for the review and so on that took place starting December 18th of last year, and regional audits have taken place, and we get kind of encompassed in all of that as well. And so I'm looking probably within the next couple of weeks for additional information as to moving forward and next steps to take.
And what are you hearing from seniors in the community who must be just really excited to get in here?
Well, I'm not sure that news has all crept out. They're a little skeptical because of the March announcement, nothing happening during the major building season. So there's some considerable skepticism after 30 years, which is understandable. But I know that there's a lot of excitement in the development of this.
And I imagine, that demand has been there for this past 20 years. So what has that meant for the seniors who have been kind of hoping for this care home in the meantime? How have they been living?
Well, the seniors certainly that aren't in personal care yet are anxious for it to be done, so that when they get to that stage of their lives, that there's some facility in the area that's readily available. And those that are in need of care, many of them are in hospital beds, and so that's a completely different service than what they actually need.
Well, I imagine there must have also just been some folks who were thinking, eventually they'll make their way to this care home, but never did.
That's correct. Yeah, because we just didn't have the capacity in our community for that. Yeah.
That must be a little heartbreaking, hey?
It is. Absolutely it is. Because we a few years ago when we first started all our research, the region required about 240 more personal care homes than they had. So there was a lot of people that were out of the opportunity to be in a personal care home in our local area.
And once this personal care home is built, how many people is it going to be able to hold?
95 beds. We presently have a 30-bed in the community, and that'll be replaced by the 95 bed. And so we've got a net gain of 65 beds in our immediate region. Yeah.
And that's going to make a pretty big impact for a lot of folks in the community, I imagine.
Absolutely, yeah, because what happens initially, oftentimes in the community, people are looking for a personal care home bed, and they're being sent all over the place to be serviced, and they're provided for. And now, once this is built, we'll be able to handle that locally, and we're excited about that.
What do you think it's going to be like when you officially, get to walk into this building for the first time?
I don't know that yet, but I'm looking forward to that day.
What's the chances you might live in it?
I have no plans for that. I'm healthy and plan to stay that way.
Nice to know it's there, though, just in case.
Absolutely. But we care about everybody that needs it, and that's why we're doing it.
Gordon Peters is president and interim CEO of the Lac du Bonnet Heritage Corp. If all goes to plan, he says residents will start moving in by the end of 2026.
Your local news at your fingertips.
CBC News has a local news app made for your phone or tablet.
So don't waste time scrolling for the local stories you want. Just download the app to get the information that matters to you when it happens.
And how you want it.
Another way to get your local news. The CBC News app. Download it today.
You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM and 990 AM. Well, alcohol sales are slowing down across the country. People are cutting down or quitting booze altogether for a variety of reasons. What about you? Have you cut down? Maybe you've quit. How did it make you feel? We want to hear from you. Our phone lines will open 355. Plus, if you live or grew up in a small town, you know that, well, everyone seems to know everything about everyone, even if they don't talk to one another. It's this kind of idea that inspires the writing of Donna Basil, an author from Lac du Bonny, and we're going to be speaking more on her work. And today, a nice day outside. Southwest winds of 20 kilometers per hour this afternoon, dropping down to a low of 6 degrees, but looking for that high of 25 today. Clearing in the morning out in Brandon, mainly cloudy, some light winds as well. Southwest of 20 kilometers per hour this afternoon, looking for highs of 21 degrees for you. Also dropping down this evening, mainly cloudy, clearing before morning, looking for a low of +4. We're still on the right side of zero. And Thompson, cloudy with a 30% chance of showers, looking for a high of just 11 degrees today. Clearing overnight, dropping on the other side to a low of -1. And in Churchill, mainly cloudy, highs of 9 degrees for you today. Tomorrow, though, looking for a high of just +4. It is 12:16 here on Radio Noon. Well, we're never exactly sure what kind of stories we'll hear during our Communities in Focus, but in Lac du Bonny, one of the stories we found was that of a storyteller herself. We met Donna Basil at the Communities in Focus mobile office in Lac du Bonny. Donna is an author whose stories reflect her upbringing in Whiteshell Provincial Park and, of course, small town Nude Man, and a memoir, The Unraveling, Incest and the Destruction of a Family. And this evening, she'll share some of her writing at McNally Robinson Grant Park for the launch of Prairie's Fire fall issue titled 50 over 50, honoring women writers in Canada. Donna joins us ahead of the event. Hi, Donna.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for interviewing me.
Very excited to speak with you. So, Donna, tell us a little bit about your writing. How would you describe your style?
As you mentioned, I grew up in Whiteshell, and I describe myself as a boreal writer. And when people ask me what I write about, I say mostly sex and death. It kind of covers everything.
That does cover quite a spectrum.
Yes.
So did you always want to be an author?
I have an English honors degree, and I was always a very, very avid reader. And then I was teaching language arts, and after the death of my husband, it sort of crystallized things for me. Like if I'm going to write, it's, life is short. So there you go.
So sex and death, those are your two spectrums.
Yeah, that covers it.
Yeah, so these books and stories draw a lot of inspiration from small town life. So give me an idea. What is it about this small town that inspires you so much to talk about this spectrum of ideas?
Well, I find the stories that people have in small towns are just absolutely fascinating. There was a American writer called Elizabeth Strout, and she also lived in a small town in Maine, and she wrote a book called Olive Kitteridge, and it was about small town Maine, and it was made into a TV series with Frances McDormand, and it's just amazing writing. It's how people think they are, but how they really are, and, it was just super fascinating. I love Elizabeth Strout's writing, so, yeah.
So we mentioned one of the titles of one of your short stories.
That came from a story I wrote for CBC. It was actually shortlisted for the CBC Literary Awards. And I had a bed and breakfast, and a nude man showed up nude. So I this is pretty funny. I did not expect this. So I wrote a story about it.
So do people in the town think that if they tell you things or share some of these funny stories with you that they might end up in one of your books?
Sometimes I've been told, so I don't want you to do that. So it's like, but as I mentioned to Chloe, I said, I sort of migrate between being a pariah and then being a local celebrity and back to being a pariah again.
We have all the good gossip.
Not always. Being writing is kind of isolating because you're alone all the time. But yeah, I have a lot of connections up throughout all of Eastman because I grew up in the White Shell. I went to high school in Whitemouth. I lived in Lactabani for many decades. I taught in Parview, Pine Falls, and then I have a lot of friends in Beausejour, so I do hear a lot of stuff from all over. So yeah.
So where did your writing start? You said you write about sex and death.
Yes.
Tell me where that came from and where you started.
Well, just to me, those are pretty elemental things to think about when you're alive, and they drive a lot of what we're doing all the time. The first time I wrote that lessons from. No, I wrote a different story. I wrote about a story called Dead Skunk, and that was based on my first day on a Hutterite colony and as a teacher, and the kids were playing with a dead skunk. So yeah, a lot of it is based on actual things that happen, and then you just sort of spin a story about it, So I hope that helps you understand. I don't have to invent too many things because it seems a lot of things have happened in my life that I think need to be written about. So,
a lot of people don't want to think about death. Is it something that you find difficult to think about, to put down on words on paper when it comes to that?
Not really. My mother died when I was 14, so it's been a part of my life.
It was something you knew early on.
Yes.
Yeah. So can you tell me a bit about your reading this evening? What is Prairie Fire's 50 over 50 issue about?
Well, they put out a call for women over 50 to submit stories, poems, nonfiction. And they had 1,100 submissions, so they decided to break it into two issues. The first issue, the one that's being launched tonight, is mostly Manitoba authors plus a few BC people. They're actually going to do another launch in BC, in Victoria, I believe. So, and then they're going to put in another issue. I guess the winter issue will be the others that they picked. Catherine Bitney was the guest editor, and she's also one of the founders of Prairie Fire. She's the long-term, Casey Adams, who is an Indigenous artist, designed the beautiful cover, and she's also a contributor. What else can I tell you? This is a funny thing. I think yesterday was International Ageism Awareness Day, and it strikes me always as ironic that older women probably are the biggest, not the biggest readers, but they're the people who read the most. But it's not always easy for older women to get published because, a whole bunch of reasons. But so International Ageism Awareness Day was yesterday. So I think it's kind of cool that Prairie Fire is celebrating older women. So,
it's very fitting.
It's very fitting, yes.
So Dawn,
what else? I encourage people to attend, because there's going to be a whole bunch of really great women writers there, and I'm so proud to be included in that.
Absolutely. It's a great way to find some new authors, too, if you're looking for a new book, to celebrate some of our women over 50 here in our province as well. So really, What does it mean to you to see female authors over 50 celebrated in this way, yourself included? You talked about a little bit about how it's difficult for many people to get published when you start hitting those ages.
Yes, it is. But, there's a lot of hot young writers these days. They're young and they're great. I've spent a lot of time working with young writers, and they're brilliant. They're smart. I've done 2 mentorships with the Manitoba Writers Guild with young, really smart writers. But there's something to be said for older writers having a certain understanding of the world and, maybe a little more acquainted with that the death part, awareness that life is kind of limited and we have to say some things that might not get said.
And the experience that you can bring.
Yes, experience. I had a writing mentor. He was an Irish writer. He ended up here because his wife was a doctor up north, and then she became the public health officer here in the Eastman area. And he was adamant that people really don't mature as a writer until they're in their 40s.
So there's still time. There's still time for many of us.
Oh, yes.
So, Donna, just quickly here, can you tell us a little bit about the story that you're going to be sharing tonight?
Oh, excuse me. We noticed a guy always riding around on his bicycle, and he was kind of a hermit in the community. There was a gold mine near Westhock Lake, near Star Lake, actually, and he stayed on in a shack after the gold mine was abandoned. And, people were always kind of not leery of him, but, the kids noticed him when going by on the bus and, kind of made fun of him. So this story is about a young girl who's sort of like me, but not me, who's riding a horse in the bush, and a bear slides down a tree. And a dog comes out and sort of chases the bear away. And it happens to be the story is called Bicycle Pete. And it happens to be Bicycle Pete's dog.
All right.
So there's a kind of a tension there. Like, first of all, the bear sliding down the tree. She's wondering what's going to happen. Also, she's on a horse, so the horse might buck and bolt, fling her off. And then there's this dog who, she doesn't really know it. But yeah, I could go on, but I'm not going to tell you.
Well, we'll leave it at that. We don't want to give it all away.
It's a great interview. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love watching you on CBC.
Oh,
it's a
thank
great
you so
pleasure
much.
every night.
I appreciate it. Donna Basil is an author from Lac de Bonnie. She is featured in the latest edition of Prairie Fire 50 over 50, honoring women writers in Canada, and will be reading a story excerpt this evening at McNally Robinson Grant Park. That launch event takes place at 7 p.m.
Cloud nine, you're the one who put me here. All started when you bought me a beer and we stayed up all night talking. Now I got a ring in your last name. Some things will never change, 'cause baby we're still talking about big dreams we're living way over the moon. The sky is the limit. That's how we do, that's how we do. You always wanna find that feeling. I'm always gonna break that ceiling. Need that adrenaline rush. Ain't no way we're ever giving it all in. Long as we're together, you and I will be chasing that high forever. Nothing ever hits like the first time. We had one hell of a first night. If I'm ever running, I'm running with you. We don't stop for nothing. That's how we do, that's how we do. You always wanna find that feeling. I'm always gonna break that ceiling. Need that adrenaline rush. Ain't no way we're ever giving it all. There's only one way we're going. Ain't no way we're ever slowing down. Long as we're together, you and I will be chasing that high If I'm ever running, I'm running with you. We don't stop for nothing. That's how we do, that's how we do. Always wanna find that.
Coming up at 12:35, alcohol sales are slowing down across the country. People are cutting down or quitting booze altogether. We want to hear from you. Have you given up? Are you quitting? Are you cutting back? How did it make you feel? Send us a text right away, 204-588-7355.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at 16 degrees with cloudy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. More needs to be done in this province, advocate for children and youth Sherry Gott. In a report released today, she says between 2019 and 2021, there were 48 sleep-related infant deaths. 85% of those deaths were because they had unsafe sleep surfaces. Most of those infants who died were Indigenous, and most lived in the Winnipeg R2W postal code, which is in the North End. Gott says many are in poverty, and there needs to be a better support system available to them.
Supporting and helping families to obtain safe sleep surfaces and stuff like that would certainly help. And providing that information, education, and resources in that area.
Part of Gott's report calls for the province to improve tracking and analysis of sleep-related infant deaths. The province is once again lowering the eligibility age for women to get screened for breast cancer. The government will lower the age for self-referral screenings from 50 to 40 by the end of 2026. The Health Ministry says the province is working with Cancer Care Manitoba to build up capacity for an expected influx of screenings. That includes hiring more mammographers and technologists and adding more appointments. There have been calls to lower the age to 40 from breast cancer patients and survivors. After making what it called an inadvertent error earlier this year, Canada's independent budget watchdog ran a second analysis of the federal carbon tax and rebates. That analysis yielded a similar conclusion to its first one. Now both the federal Liberals and Conservatives are claiming victory. David Thurton explains.
Our results are in the same direction as our previous reports.
Parliamentary budget rebates are better off, but consider the net impacts as well of the fuel levy on employment and investment income, and on average, Canadians are losing out.
But in a nutshell, the overall conclusions of our initial report still stand.
Like in previous reports, each political party is picking certain sections and claiming victory. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre.
And that report confirmed everything I've been saying about this horrible tax, this ripoff.
Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault in a statement says the report shows the carbon rebate gives back more money to most Canadians. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
And finally, the historic Halifax community of Africville has been designated as Canada's first UNESCO Place of History and Memory. 2024 marks the 30th anniversary of the UNESCO Roots of Enslaved Peoples program. Among other things, it supports memorial initiatives on the theme of slavery and its abolition. Africville was a settlement established by Africans who arrived in the Maritimes following the War of 1812. And that's your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, head to cbc.ca/man.